I know we're running a little behind, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I want to absolutely thank Bioregulatory Medicine Institute for inviting me here and to be able to present this. It's a real honor to be among such incredible docs, and I know I see a lot of faces that I've recognized over the years, and more importantly, I see a lot of faces that we don't know. And really, bioregulatory medicine is going to be laid on your shoulders, because it is the wave that is happening. And I know, we're in a room of 60, 70 people, whatever, but you're actually creating that wave, and it's an incredible thing. 12 years ago, I sat in a seminar like this, and it completely changed my personal life and my professional life. And I just want you to all realize that you absolutely have that opportunity. And you have an opportunity that's really greater than the one I had, because I'm not a medical doctor, and you all have that ability to really take this to the next level, and I know that that's what bioregulatory medicine is all about. So thank you for being here. Give yourselves a hand, because it's incredible that you're here. You're the cutting edge people. So there's a collective consciousness that happens in biological medicine, in bioregulatory medicine, and James and I were able to talk about that a little bit. And what you're going to see me present is what you've seen everyone present in their own way, in different ways, and that's an incredible thing. Remember that when we see something for the very first time, we only retain 7 to 10%. So it's important that you continue to go back and stay in the seminars and continue to do this to the point where it becomes unconsciously competent for you. I want to start right here. This is the grandfather. This is Paracelsus. And he said in Latin, nature heals, the physician helps the cure. And I know that's been mentioned a couple of times. What we do, what separates us from traditional allopathic medicine, is that we look for the primary stressors that cause the body to have the inability to let nature heal. It gets clogged up to the point where nature can no longer tolerate it, and so it typically will block the regulation and allow the person to drive on as long as they can. Obviously, Paracelsus was a real fashion statement guy. He liked to wear his baseball cap sideways and a dead animal on his head. He had it going on. Yeah. So if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Of course, this is Nikola Tesla. My thoughts emit energy into the universe. And today, enlightened doctors are looking for ways that they can use energy, frequency, and vibration. We do that through homeopathy. We do it through light, sound, vibration, and the electromagnetic field. This is Wilhelm Reich. He's one of my heroes. This gentleman said, the biological physician knows about the bodily functions of the emotions. He understands how and why one can die of grief. For grief is identical with the shrinking of the autonomic nervous system, and he wrote that in 1949. So this concept is not new. It just needs to be taken into the new centuries here. If you get an opportunity to really research him, he was an amazing scientist and seeker who was persecuted, of course, for this medicine. Here's your modern patient. This is who I see walking in my room. Okay? We're toxic, emotionally, and energetically disbalanced. All therapy in biological medicine is aimed at reducing or eliminating disruptive foci from the body. I don't care what that foci is. We need to try and eliminate that from the system. And by including the emotional component, we can actually lift a big burden on the physiological system. On the physiological system. And I know there may be some typos. I'm extremely dyslexic. I'm fortunate to have fantastic people around me that can help me do what I do. So I apologize for any misspellings. And so obviously if we regulate, this is very important, and I use this, I don't use the PowerPoints, but I use these concepts to actually teach my clients. So I put a blend together here for us today of what I try and teach clients over time. The folks that were here last night, I call it dating. We're going to date the client for a little bit, and I'm going to get them to start to understand these concepts. If we regulate, we can compensate. And if you compensate, just like Dr. Tom says, it's appropriate to get sick a couple of times a year, and you get over that, and you know your body's regulating appropriately. This gentleman doesn't know how he feels anymore. and he doesn't function well, and he's pushing through. The primary loads that we look at are heavy metals, chemicals, dental foci, scars on the skin, electromagnetic fields and geopathic stressors. The electromagnetic field and the Wi-Fi stuff is so important now. We're living in that soup. It's almost impossible to get away from it. I absolutely believe that this causes big gut disturbances. It makes all the bugs in the belly become more pathogenic. They get upset over being exposed to Wi-Fi. I ask all my clients to absolutely turn off their routers at nighttime. And I've seen great results with that. It takes about 2 or 3 weeks. And you'll see the result fastest if you have animals at home. I had a couple of dogs, and we started turning the Wi-Fi off at night, and I noticed the dogs just completely relaxed. And if I had the Wi-Fi on, if I moved, he'd get up and want to go somewhere. And you'll see that it'll help children tremendously if you can get the Wi-Fi off, especially at nighttime. No computers in the room, no cell phones in the room, and you'll find that your children sleep, and you will start to sleep much better. Food allergies and poor nutrition start to fill the barrel as well. Emotional stress, old immune challenges. A lot of times it's often old immune challenges, things like EBV, things like mononucleosis when we were kids. That continues to cause havoc in the system, and of course all of it ends up disturbing the intestinal mucosa. This is something I, again, teach my clients. For me, there's 3 aspects. You've got the biological side, that's everything that you're used to working on, whether it's from hormones to structural issues with chiropractors, and our clients realize that that's where most of their practitioners focus on. So the quote-unquote biological aspect, the physical body, the structure that we're in. Then there's the energetic, the acupuncture meridians, your chakras, how the body is allowing energy or not allowing energy to flow. And then I put the emotional component at the bottom. And the reason I do that is because as we go through these slides, and as Dr. Tom had mentioned earlier, somewhere between 90 and 95% of all of our actions and reactions actually start right here. And I put it on the bottom because it intersects with the energetic and the biological. And when they reach the top, if everybody is in balance, you have homeostasis and proper regulation. If one of the sides start to let go, then the whole pyramid falls apart. Right? Pyramids are absolutely the strongest structures to ever be built. They last forever, and I look at the individual like that. So when I find someone, I go, okay, where's the biggest disturbance? Is it energetic? Is it actual biological? Do you fall down and go boom? Right? Or is it psycho-emotional? So the emotional component, the greatest problem we face is that we think we are running our lives with the wishes and aspirations created by our conscious mind. When we fail to obtain our goals, we're led to conclude that we're victims of outside forces preventing us from our destination. Well, neuroscience has now established that the conscious mind runs the show about 5% of the time. Programs acquired by the subconscious mind, 95% or more of our life experiences. And this is from Bruce Lipton, who Dr. Tom mentioned earlier, The Biology of Belief. That was a study that was done in 2005. We function and act primarily guided by how we feel about things, not what we think about things. And that's important for my clients to understand. You're actually guided by how the body feels about things, not so much about what you think about things. And I'll give you a quick demonstration of that. We'll use everybody in the room, just for fun. You're all Olympic athletes today. Everybody's an Olympic athlete. Pick your sport of choice. I'm also going to let you pick your medal, but you only get a choice of 2. You can be a silver medalist or you can be a bronze medalist. How many want to be a silver medalist? Second place. Nobody? Yeah, of course, right? Conscious mind goes, yeah, second place. How many want to be bronze medalist? All right, the rest of you aren't athletes, right? Well, what's interesting is that most folks will go, yeah, I want the silver medal. And what they found is they did a study and they actually researched this and they asked silver medalists, they asked them certain questions. And what they found is that the silver medalist actually was not very happy with his achievement. They said things like, well, if I had just done a little more, if I had just been a little faster, I would have had the gold medal. And so they found that they were actually not as happy. When they talked to the folks that had won the bronze medal, they said things like, I medaled. It's fantastic to be here. I'm actually going home. And it wasn't such a concern that they didn't win silver. So the conscious mind goes, well, I really want to be silver medalist. But how we feel about it ultimately, the body's really better off going, well, I medaled. So it's just an interesting thing that happens. This is another thing I show clients. These are the 6 basic needs of emotional balance. So the first one on the bottom is environmental safety. If I'm growing up in an environment that I don't feel is safe, you're going to be instantly disturbed. And then, what's the family connection like? Is mom and dad really there? And if they are there, are they present? What's going on with the family connection? I was the firstborn. I remember my sister being born. It really made me mad. I was upset. Now they have this girl. She's really important. And suddenly I felt cast aside. So what's going on with the family connection? I also lost my mother when I was 14. And I went through a lot of relationships trying to heal that, unfortunately. And then the social connection. And when these 3 are disturbed, the next 3 get disturbed. And the sense of self-perception and self-esteem is a problem. The sense of purpose, they can't find a sense of purpose. And ultimately what we all shoot for is self-fulfillment. And so I just want to make my clients aware that this is a way to look at what's going on. And I often find the greatest disturbances are down here, right? Especially down here and with the family connection. I don't need to go into stories about that stuff. It's pretty self-evident. So that which is emotionally suppressed eventually becomes physically expressed. This is a mantra that I say in the clinic all day long. And it doesn't mean that a client's consciously suppressing their emotional experiences. It means that the body deals with these stressors and that lets the person live through that stuff. And so high emotional events create a charged synaptic pathway in the brain that can later trigger feelings and behaviors that perpetuate a pattern in the individual. This can create a sense of a narrowing of control or the loss of free will, and the person literally feels like they're a victim of circumstances. And I'm sure that you have clients, or you guys have patients that come in and say, it just happens to me. Everything's happening to me. I have no control over this. It doesn't matter what somebody does. I never get better. And they literally feel like they're out of control. The body will always find ways to express emotional stress. And it is almost always expressed through unexplained pain. And I know the folks that were here last night, we talked about that a little bit. And you all have people that come in and go, well, my knee hurts me, my left knee hurts, or my right knee hurts. And I say, well, does it hurt all the time? Did you fall down and go boom? Did you have a skiing accident? Right? And they go, no, some days I'm fine, and other days it's just really painful. Well, that's the body trying to release some kind of emotional stress. I've got folks that come in and say, well, I've got terrible low back pain. Right? Or I've got glute pain. And I'll say, we'll have a conversation. I'll date them for a little while. And if they have that kind of pain, I'll say, jokingly, well, let me ask you. You got this glute pain going on. You've got this sciatic stuff going on. Who's the pain in your butt? And then, believe it or not, a lot of times they'll go, well, my husband, bah, 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 bah. And in 20 or 30 minutes, they get up and go, wow. It actually does feel a little better. So the body's going to try and express this, and I see it clinically all the time. People will say, I've got terrible neck ache. And I'll say, okay, tell me who's the pain in your neck. Well, my kids are, right? And so the body's going to talk to you. And if you listen to the client, they know what's going on, and they'll be able to express it. And especially when you become very good at reading people's body language, because the body's really what's telling us things, right? Verbal communication is like 10%, right? It's the body language that gives you all the information. And I use that all the time. I see how someone sits, how they hold their arms. Do they swing their legs? How nervous are they? Do they sit down and well up on the table? All right? Common clinical points of emotional release. Left or right side body pain. I love this, and I see it a lot. Someone comes in and says, well, the whole left side of my body is bad. It doesn't work. It feels weird. You can't use this shoulder, right? Well, I think that's an odd presentation of things. And it's almost always emotionally related. Low back pain is oftentimes feeling like I am supporting everyone and everything, or I get no support at all, and my low back starts to hurt. All of this are signals of emotional stress. Pain is a signal that vibrational harmony and energy flow has actually been lost or disturbed in the body. Winning is a habit, so is losing. Lombardi said that, right? Fantastic football coach. And the reason I put that up there is to start to demonstrate that what we think is what we become. So if the person has been knocked down over and over and over again, and they're going through all this medical intervention, you know, they start to get an attitude of defeat. And that's easy to hold on to. Well, I've seen everybody, no one can really make me better. Right? There's nothing that's going to make me better. And when that happens, I jump back to, well, of course no one's going to make you better. Because no one's actually looking at the things that are blocking your body from letting nature actually heal you. And I know Dr. Thomas said earlier, he put what was it, Voltaire up there, right? Saying, what's the job of the physician? I was very fortunate. I have fantastic mentors in my life. And one of my mentors that said to me one time, do you know what the job of a physician is? And I said, well, yeah, to cure people. And he hit me and said, no, dummy. The job of the physician is to actually entertain while nature heals them. And that is so true. Change is the most difficult thing for people to go through, and that's actually what we're asking them to do. We're asking them to change. We're asking them to change their lifestyle, change their diet, change their attitude, change what they're thinking about, change the concept of allopathic medicine. My first introduction to traditional contemporary medicine, I'll say contemporary medicine, was through the military. I was a combat medic. I was good at emergency medicine. When I got out of the service, I continued to do that, and that became very stressful. I was used to it in the service. We all signed up for that. It was a different kind of thing. I did not like going to car accidents. And one day I got up and sat on the edge of the bed and got ready for a shift, and my hands were shaking. I mean, really tremoring. And so I called the company up and said, I'm not coming in. And they said, okay, we'll see you tomorrow. And I said, no, I'm not coming back. Because I realized that it was just too much on my nervous system to continue to go to accidents caused by alcoholics hitting kids on bicycles. And it was just something I couldn't deal with anymore. So change, however, is the most difficult thing for people to go through, and I want us to realize that that's really what we're asking folks to do. Because biological regulatory medicine is not take this pill and feel better. It truly is a lifestyle. And you're never really done, right? And so that's important to impart to our clients to realize, hey, this is not about just taking herbs instead of medications. This is about a whole different way of actually living. Helping people change their minds, their habits, and their outlook actually helps manifest the cure, because all we can do is help manifest the cure and let nature heal them. So take control over self-talk. I try and help them do that. Most of our clients suffer from what I call stinking thinking. It's easy to be negative. And they suffer from stinking thinking. And they've been taught that from the get-go. Just like Dr. Tom said earlier. Right? We're told no so many times by the time we're 3 years old, we don't feel capable anymore. So I help clients practice mindfulness, notice details, check in with their body. I notice a lot of times it's difficult for them to make eye contact. It's really important for us to make eye contact with them. There was a young lady that helped me last night, and we made eye contact, and there's something that really happened. It was fantastic. And so ultimately, none of this is rocket science. Consciously breathe, walk, unplug. It is so important that we try and unplug from this soup of Wi-Fi and electromagnetic fields. Try and get folks to unplug, even if it's for a little bit of time. And stop multitasking. There's no such thing as multitasking. You cannot do two things at once. And so it's important. I've got folks that literally come into my office and I say, wow, you look exhausted. And she said, well, I've been working till 3 o'clock in the morning. Really? Do you think you're getting anything done at 3 o'clock in the morning? Do you think you're being productive at 3 o'clock in the morning? Right? But that's really our culture. Our culture is sympathetic, and it's very concerned about what's going on up here and has very little concern about what's going on here and here on an energetic level. I truly continue to hold on to the concept that we have 3 brains in our body. You've got the one in your head. That's a filing cabinet. It tells you where you parked the car, maybe. Right? You know your name. But the heart and the gut are also enteric brains, and they're feelers. And they actually know what's going on prior to what the brain understands. And so I try and get clients to understand that, hey, if you do some of this stuff, you're going to start to feel better. And I want people to start to use a power mindset. And one of the ways you can help them do that is get them to remember past victories. Do you remember what it was like when you actually won that baseball game? You remember what you felt like? And I have folks do a lot of body movement to do that as well. Start to get the idea of using power mindsets, affirmations. And one of the big and strong affirmations is, I possess resourcefulness and invincibility. Accessing the bio-emotional component. So the brain, the heart, and the gut. And the connection between them through the vagal nerve pathway and its connections to the central and peripheral nervous system serves as the access points for the corrections that I try and do with folks. Essentially, what we're striving to do is relieve the regulatory system from perceived burdens or reactions. It's perceived. It's not historically true necessarily. It doesn't matter. You know, we can sit you and have you watch a movie, and your nervous system will feel that that's happening to you. Right? Everyone's had the experience of having a dream and waking up with a physiological response. So whether you are awake or you're asleep, or whether you're thinking about something or actually experiencing something, the physical body perceives it all as the same thing. So what we're doing is we're trying to release these traumas and these triggers, or looping emotionally charged synaptic programs that often hold the individual in a sympathetic fight or flight response. And once you're there for a long time, it's going to drain out the ability of the parasympathetics to kick back in. So how do we do this? Well, I do it in many different ways. I have lots of different techniques. I'm going to present a technique. I'm also going to give folks that aren't necessarily comfortable with muscle testing. I use muscle testing all day long. If we're not comfortable with muscle testing, there are other ways you can help a client actually understand, wow, there's some emotional components to this, and maybe I can help release this. So hand mudras. They've been used throughout the centuries to bring about states of consciousness, both in Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism. You can see this in paintings and in sculptures around the world. Right? Everyone knows Buddha does this, he does this, he does this. Everyone knows Jesus does this, he does this. And there's two reasons for that. One is there's an energetic state of mind that will help the system if you hold these positions. I teach my clients to hold positions. And the other is that they were teaching at a time where most people could not read. They were not reading. And so they taught through symbolism. So what's Jesus saying when he does this? Well, my heart is open, as above, so below. So I've put together a quick and easy way to go through hand mudras and actually access the autonomic nervous system and see if that nervous system blows out just because you're holding a hand position. Our thumbs, our fingertips, in my understanding, this is my idea, is that they're very, very sensitive to vibration. They're full of autonomic nervous system fiber, and when I go like this, there's a program that comes up in my nervous system. When I go like this, there's a program that comes up in my nervous system. If I go like this, there's a program that comes up in my nervous system. And that's what I'm trying to access to help folks get some relief from the emotional stress. GB14, clear mind point. This is the emotional points in the body. And we had mentioned it last night. If the fire alarms suddenly go off in this room, a vast majority of us will suddenly go, oh my gosh, the building's on fire. Everyone has seen someone grab their forehead when they're stressed. I believe it's a natural response the body has to try and actually stop the emotional event from being imprinted into my system. So folks go, oh my gosh, can't believe it. A lot of men will take their glasses off and grab bladder one, grab their nose. Same thing, it's emotional stress. So if you're having a conversation with a client and you mention, well, we're going to really change your diet, we're going to get all this mercury out of your system, and they go, wow, that sounds awesome, just know that you've stressed them emotionally, right? And it's better to go slow, right? Because the body's going to talk to you. I just have conversations with folks and I just watch what their body does. And it gives me so much information about where they're at, because I need to meet them where they're at and then gently lead them into the place of becoming and understanding that bioregulatory medicine is really the way to go, right? And that changing their lifestyle and changing their mind is what is going to help them do that. So it's a reflex for shock and trauma. One finger above the eyebrows, in line with the center of the pupils. And that's an easy one to remember. I don't have someone grab with both hands because I'm actually going to muscle test with one. So I'll have them take their fingers and put it up, but most of the time I go, oh, just give me an oh my goodness. I can't believe I'm doing this, okay? This, Gyan Mudra. This mudra is for thought, consciousness, awareness. It stimulates the mind. It's the mudra of the brain and knowledge. It also represents the physicality of the body. And the emotions the negative emotions that surround that are worry, an overthinker, they're fearful, and it can be a sign of a repressed or a lack of a memory of a traumatic event. Vanya. This is intestine, reactive, instinctive. This is very strong in most women. Their guts tell them a lot. I just knew he was weird, right? I felt it in my stomach. I wasn't going to date that guy, right? That's your intuition. It stimulates the guts. It relates to intuition. It's digestive properties, and it's not just digesting food. It's, can I digest life? Can I digest what's happening to me? Can I actually digest that and utilize that in some way? The emotions are low self-esteem, lack of control over events, feeling dogmatically positioned, stuck, stubborn, inflexible, those types of things. Apnavaya, this is the heart mudra, stimulates the heart and the circulatory system. It accesses the emotions of the heart memory and the flow of life. Emotions are abandoned, deserted, lost, brokenhearted. Prana. This refers to the balance of all the energy in the body. After I do this work with somebody, I'll ask them to do this. And if they can do this and give me a strong muscle test, I feel like, okay, all the meridians are flowing appropriately, there's regulation going on, and they're going to be balanced out a little better. So check that. If it blows out, oftentimes you'll find the emotions are grief, sadness, or confusion. The points I use to make these little corrections, GV20, the very top of the head, relates to our central nervous system. It's the spiritual awareness point. It's the point for stimulating the central nervous system. And I'm just tapping it. I love this one, GV16, the window of heaven. This is the point that stimulates the peripheral nervous system. In Tibetan Buddhism, it is also considered the point where the spirit leaves the body. Really cool. And I love the master point of tranquility. A lot of you, of course, know CV17. This is fantastic for anxiety. Someone comes in and is actually having a panic attack. I'll lay them down on the table, and I'll take my finger and stick it right on CV17, and it is so painful, it's unbelievable. Right between the nipples of the breast, and for a lot of you, if you can get in there and you push a little bit, you'll be like, whoa, there's a hot spot. And I will rub that hard. And I won't let them close their eyes. You're going to keep your eyes open, and we're going to rub this, and I want you to make noise. Ah! So people are walking up and down the clinic, and they're hearing people in the room going, ah! And what are they doing? Oh, he's just touching them. And it's emotion. So when we're done, a lot of times tears will happen, and when we're done, the person gets up and goes, whew, wow, huh, I'm a little wrung out. Yeah, where's your anxiety? How's your anxiety feel? Whew, yeah, it's lifted. So I teach folks to also just hold it. If you're feeling anxious, just reach up and hold that point. It's a fantastic point for alleviating stress, panic attacks. It's the point for emotional release. Now, so I had a young lady come to me for a health concern. We started to handle that with her, and she started to understand what we were doing, got very excited about it, and said, you know, I'm a high school athlete, I'm a runner, and I wonder if you can help me with something I've not been able to overcome. I said, sure, what's going on? She said, well, and she's a sweet, sweet woman. She's now in college. That's her right there. So she said, I want to break a 5:20 mile. No matter how much I practice, no matter how much I train, I just cannot break a 5:20 mile. I said, okay, let's see if it's emotional. There wasn't anything else left. She was in pretty good shape. She's a young woman. So I took her through the process and did some emotional release techniques with her. And I got her conscious mind to go, hey, I'm actually safe. I'm safe in breaking a 520 mile. And when I asked her to repeat that sentence, she couldn't hold a muscle test. So I said, well, grab this point and let's see. I'm okay breaking a 520 mile. She said, I'm okay breaking a 520 mile. And she went strong. I said, okay, we'll figure this out. And I took her through the process. And she came back to me in a week. And this is what she showed me. I did emotional rebalance, and I did a 518.8 mile. Now, if that was placebo, awesome. I do not care. It doesn't matter. Because our minds are the strongest healing thing that we have, because they really are connected, right? They're connected to the universe, right? And so once her nervous system, not her conscious mind, but once her nervous system and her body believed and understood that she could really do that, she went out and did it. So how do we do it? Well, I solicit a locked muscle to see that the person can do that and that energy actually flows. They can deal with a sympathetic test, right? If you do a muscle test with somebody, you're asking them to be sympathetic for a moment. I'm going to push on your arm. You're going to resist. They go, okay, I can do that. It's so important, and we talked about it last night a little bit. You have to know the person regulates. You have to know the person regulates. If they do not regulate, none of this is going to work, because the body doesn't see it, right? And we had some great folks here last night who didn't regulate, and we figured out ways to get them to regulate for a moment, and it's important. So whether you do that through the heart rate variability, which I do with every single client that walks in my door, gets a heart rate variability. I want to get a baseline on them in regards to that. The heart rate variability is going to tell me whether or not they regulate. Then I'm going to do some muscle testing to confirm that, yes, indeed, they certainly regulate. And once I know that's happening, I'm going to contact the point of pain or have them think of the traumatic event. So somebody comes in with a bad knee, it comes and goes. I'm going to say, okay, I want you to hold that knee for a second. We're going to muscle test it. Oh, you can't tolerate me stressing your knee. Let's see if there's an emotional component to it. We're going to put the hands on gallbladder 14. If that changes the test, I know there's an emotional component to it. The body's trying to release some kind of emotional stressor. You have the client move through every single mudra while we're doing that. Any mudra that's nice and strong, fabulous, energy flows. If I find that I'm contacting a painful knee and a particular mudra continues to blow out, I'm going to go to CV20, or I'm going to go to the point on the back of the head, and one of them will suddenly make the muscle test strong. And if the one that makes it strong, energy flows. The one that stays weak needs to be corrected. And all I do is have them go through some respirations, and I tap the point. I typically do 3 to 5 respirations. I'm just tapping the point, holding the position, and holding the knee. And then I retest it. And I go through every single mudra again, because it's really fast. You can do it really quickly once you teach the client how to do that. And a lot of times they'll get up and go, wow, that seems to be better, or that seems to be gone. Correct any energy flows that weaken the central or peripheral nervous system points combined with the mudra's respiration. Retest the area for energy flow. This, I love having clients do this. And I've expanded it quite a bit at this point, but I have clients do timelines. And I've asked them to give me bullet points, because I have had people come in with a novel. And I don't have time to look through your novel. I need the primary bullet points, the things you remember that were traumatic or dramatic in your life, any abuses, any time you moved, any losses that you went through, births, deaths. For children, when we move them from house to house or move them from school to school, that is a very traumatic event for children. They don't have any control. Mommy's packing everything up and we're leaving this house. I have a 4.5-year-old, and he's very attached to our house. And my wife and I have been talking about, maybe we're going to sell this house and we'll move and we'll, get a little nicer home. And my son is adamantly against that idea. He's like, I love this house. This is where I was born. And this is the room I was born in. And it's his special place. So I think we're staying. So a client comes in, I ask him to do bullet points. I'll take those bullet points and I'll read them to the client while I'm muscle testing. Any bullet point that gives me a weakness, I take them through the process. So, I read the bullet points to the client. Any weakness or lack of flow of energy should be corrected. Again, gallbladder 14, CV 17 points to make the emotional correction or release, and correct all the mudras as well. Organs and emotions, I'll go through real quick. I know all the acupuncturists know this stuff. Your heart, small intestines, thyroid. Feelings of loss, vulnerable, loss of love, shocked, repressed, abandoned, deserted. You'll have all this on your computer keys, so we'll get right through it. This is fabulous. I have folks do these questions, and it's important that they do them spontaneously, but they are fabulous. If you could break any rule without any consequences, what rule would you break? This is a good one. It's the most difficult one for people to answer. A lot of times I get, well, I'd speed. Oh, you already speed in the car. And that's a law, not a rule. Rules are typically self-imposed. So if you could break any rule without any consequences, what rule would you break? I asked that to a wonderful woman who was in her mid-70s. She went through these, and I said, if you could break any rule without any consequences, what rule would you break? Oftentimes I do this right in my room, and I read the questions and I write down their answers. I don't give them a chance. Sometimes I have to give it to them and say, all right, bring it back to me next week, but it's really not as effective because I want a spontaneous answer. And she said to me, I'd have sex with more men. I said, that's awesome. You should go do that. I asked them, are you in a relationship? And if so, are you happy? If not, do you wish you were? Because there's some folks that are in dysfunctional relationships it's comfortable. It's where they need to be. It may not be healthy, but that's if they can't change that. They're not going to change that. It becomes a part of who they are. It becomes a part of how they function. Do you feel like you're in touch with your life's purpose? The way these are written are very important. I'm not asking, do you know your life purpose? Are you living your life purpose? Are you in touch with it? Okay? And oftentimes, they are not. And I've had clients come back to me and say, hey, we've done all this work. It's been fantastic. I'm totally in. Let me ask you a question. Can you tell me what my life's purpose is? And I thought about it quite a bit. And the answer I've come up with is, yeah, your life's purpose is to act and react appropriately to every moment that comes your way. If the building's on fire, you should get out. If you're hungry, you should eat. If you're tired, you should sleep. Your life's purpose is to just appropriately deal with everything that comes up in front of you. Do you feel stressed over money? That's a big one. And these two are fantastic. If your health condition had a message to deliver to you, what would it say? I would say about 60% of the time I get the exact same answer to this question from everybody. You know what it is? Rest. They literally will write, oh, it's telling me I need to rest. I need to slow down. I need to do less. And I go, great. Oh, that's fabulous. Let's have you do less. And they go, well, I can't do that. I can't do less. I've got the kids, I've got the husband, I've got the job, I work till 3 in the morning. No, you actually need to rest. And oftentimes when you make somebody rest, when they agree that they'll actually rest, they initially will get more tired. They start resting, and because they're resting, the parasympathetic start to kick in, and suddenly they realize, oh my goodness, I actually am exhausted. But as long as I'm doing and going, I continue to function. And that is disbalance and regulation. I love this one. What does your body need in order to heal? Literally, I kid you not, 90% of the clients will write the same word down and then literally say to me, I don't know why I wrote that down. So anyone have a guess? What does your body need in order to heal? Love. They literally write love. And I go, and they'll say, I don't know why I wrote that down. Or I don't know why I said that. I go, I know why you said that. It's actually because that's what you need. And that's what we don't have. If you spend enough time with your clients, eventually the story will come out that oftentimes the primary relationship is horrendous. We see a lot of ladies. My clinic's very different in some ways. I do see a lot of men as well, but primarily it's a lot of women, anywhere. It used to be from 40 up, but now it's more like they're teens and up with all kinds of issues. And ultimately what I find over time is that they start to express this idea that they don't have the relationship they want, or they feel very stuck in the relationship. I have 3 kids. He's horrible. I don't know who's walking in the door from day to day, but I can't go anywhere. I can't make a change. And this one, what have you left behind? And I don't mean, oh, I left my toys behind. I mean, what have you left behind? This one often relates to folks that are a little overweight. So if you have someone that's a little obese, I will ask them, hey, what have you left behind in your life? And I'll give them examples. I'll say things like, well, hey, when I was a teenager, I used to write a lot of poetry. I haven't written poetry in a long time. I was a martial artist for almost 20 years. And I've kind of left that behind now. So what have you left behind in your life? Because leaving things behind will often create an emotional disbalance for the person. So they're great. I give this to you, and I give this to clients once I have dated them for quite a while. This is my little formula that I came up with. Thought plus emotion, because remember, our emotions are what power us. Okay? They're the thing they're the fuel to the fire. So the first thing you have to do is you have to have a thought. You have to multiply that with an emotion. You have to add that to an emotion. Multiply it by an action and you get results. So what I have the client do is I say, look, what's the result you want? Figure out what actions we need to take. Can you hold an emotional component to keep that fired up and get control of your thoughts a little bit? There is no manifestation outside of this. Thoughts plus emotions, actions equal results. If you leave one of them out, you're not going to get the results you want. Buddha said all suffering is born from attachment. And that is true. That which we are attached to are the things that are going to cause us grief and sadness ultimately. And it's okay. It's just nice to know it. I've expanded it a little bit. Thank you, Buddha. Desire, attachment, attainment, and loss. I find that folks get stuck in one of these places on an emotional level. I had several experiences with attainment and attachment. And what I mean by that is this. I've had folks come in that were extremely wealthy individuals, and their greatest concern was that they were going to lose their money. They were deeply attached to it and paralyzed by it. Oftentimes that does not occur with someone who manifested the money in their lifetime. It's almost always shows up when the money is continually handed down and you're a trust fund child. And suddenly this attachment and the idea of, oh my gosh, if I do anything I could lose it. And then what would that do to my family? What would that say to my grandfather? And what's interesting about this little run here is that then we experience loss. And once we experience loss, what's the next thing that shows up? Desire. And I'm going to go through it again, right? So I end up with desire, then I get attainment, I actually get what I want. And oftentimes getting what you want, just like the silver medal, isn't really what the body vibrates with. So be careful what you wish for. I find a lot of folks that on the outside look very successful, fantastic McMansions they live in, but there's issues in here somewhere. So, is the patient stuck in one or more of these phases of suffering? Because they are phases of suffering. These are nonverbal indications of what's going on for somebody. So when I go to muscle test somebody, if they're holding on to something, they're going to have a clenched fist. They're unwilling to let go. And I'll often say, oh, you can open your hand. It's okay. You can open your hand. And it's uncomfortable for them. Closed eyes. This happens probably more than any of the other ones. I literally walk up and go, okay, we're going to do this. Put your arm up for me. And as I touch them, they close their eyes. I say, you can open your eyes. And they literally find it difficult to do that. So for me, that's an indication that I don't want to look at something. I'm going to keep something inside. Touching the chin. Touching the chin is often feeling shame over something. The jitterbug is unexpressed worry, nervous, body's trying to balance the energy out. You got somebody sitting on the table and their legs are just swinging. And they just cannot relax. And that, for me, is the body trying to express some emotional stress out of the body, out of the system. Neck rubbing. They disagree with what you're saying. They don't believe it. They're going to change their story on you. Crossed arms. They're closed off, they're shut the memory or information out, or they're shutting you out. All right? You're sitting there going, okay, you know what? Bioregulatory medicine is going to be able to help you. I know you've been everywhere, you've seen everyone, you've not had great results. It's okay. I think we're going to be able to help you. And they close their arms and I start to back off. And then when the arms drop out, you realize, okay, they're a little more open. So it's real common for somebody to go, oh yeah, I totally agree with you. And I go, well, no, you really don't. It's okay. But I'm going to gently date you and take you down the road. And then that starts to disappear. Laughing, crying, and yawning are all physical expressions of an emotional release. I don't care which one shows up. I've got people that sit on the table and literally have laughing fits. And I've got people that sit on the table that just weep even before I touch them. I've put people on the table for the very first time. I turn around to start to write a note. Okay, this is who this is. Very wonderful. We're going to do our first little body scan here. And I turn around and there's tears running. The person says, I don't know why I'm crying. I go, it's okay. I know why you're crying. You're crying because your body actually knows we're going to access this nervous system. It's going to tell us the truth. It's going to tell us what you need. You're going to be able to release a lot of this stuff. And we're going to dump some of the crap out of the rain barrel for you. It's okay. I was fortunate enough at one point to work with some professional football players. And I had a gentleman sit on my table. And I said, okay, we're going to do a little muscle testing. And he laughed. And he said, oh, you're not going to push my arm down. And he had bowling balls for shoulders, I kid you not. And I said, well, it's not about strength. And when he finally went through the muscle testing, he was a little blown away. And so it is not a strength test between you and your patient. It's a way to help the patient feel what's going on in their system. I grew up in a home with 21 monkeys over 18 years. My father decided he was going to rescue all the monkeys on the planet that were in laboratories. So we had monkeys with no arms, we had monkeys with no teeth, we had monkeys that were blind. I had a diabetic monkey live on that couch for 9 years. Yeah. And what I learned, we had a lot of monkeys, and some of them were free in the house. And my father had created an entire section of the home that was floor-to-ceiling cages with a beautiful glass in front. People would come in and look at all the monkeys, and it was quite a chore keeping them clean and feeding them organic food 3 times a day. And as a teenager, it was not something that I was really into. But early on, as I went through that experience, I realized that if you want to communicate with a simian, you got to yawn. It's a very interesting thing. It's not, you know, people go, well, yawning is about, I got a bunch of yawners, isn't that interesting? It's not so much about you being tired or regulating the oxygen in your system. It is absolutely an emotional, cultural expression of agreement. So I was taught, you know, 3 and 4 years old, that, you know, if a monkey caught your eye, it was good to go like that. And they do it back to you. And then everything was happy, we were in agreement. And they would typically come up and get on me and then groom, I had a lot of hair then, and they would groom my hair, or they'd fake picking off little bugs. They fake it and go, oh, and they're grooming you to connect with you and to tell you how much they love you. Okay? So you'll find that a lot of clients will get on your table, especially if you're going to do some emotional stuff, and they'll either start laughing, crying, or they'll start yawning. And if one person yawns in the room, I'm not kidding, you'll see a cascade of yawning happening. And I watched it. We literally had 18 monkeys in cages, okay? And so one monkey would do that, and every single one of them would do it. And we take them outside. We had 3 acres right in the middle of a residential community. And we'd let them go up our trees and all kinds of stuff. And then every once in a while, my father and I would have to jump in the car and chase a monkey down that was running through the neighborhood. It taught me to be extremely parasympathetic. And actually, that experience helped me in the military to stay very parasympathetic while things were going on. Because if you get sympathetic with animals like that, they'll attack you. okay, because they register it, they feel it. And so, you know, I was taught very early on, just stay relaxed, breathe deep, give the monkey your arm, it's okay. And because there were times where they'd stand up and run at you and scream, and they're big. And, you know, if a monkey really doesn't like you, they'll pee on you. And so, you know, there's all kinds of stuff going on. But if you stay parasympathetic, honest to goodness, they completely shift. And it helped me, it continues to help me through my whole life. So look for the lost or disturbed season in the history of a client. Have them recapture this through the act of doing. I had a wonderful woman come in, and she had had very traumatic experience as a young child. And that abuse suddenly ended at 8 years old. And there was two things that were going on. Now it sounds, oh, fantastic, it ended. Well, the trauma actually showed up because it had ended. And she suddenly went, wow, I'm not good enough. That abuse went on to someone that was younger. And she felt bad about what was going on. And this all happened around 8 years old. And she was going through a lot of physical illnesses. So I said, listen, here's what I want you to do. I actually want you to take 1 day a week, and I want you to go to the playground. And I want you to get on the swings, and I want you to play around. And she said, oh, that's ridiculous. She said, I'm going to feel really weird doing that. She said, what if there's children there? I said, oh, if there's children there, go to the mom and say, I'm just playing. Can I just play with the kids? And I had dated her long enough where she trusted me, and she started to do that. And she did that for a little over a month. And no kidding, she recaptured that which was stolen from her, and it completely changed her anxiety. She literally lost 50 pounds. Now, we were doing a lot of other things, but she literally dropped 50 pounds. And a lot of that for me was the protection that she had gained and was trying to protect herself from that abuse for all those years. So I don't need to go through this. I know you all know this. Spring is early childhood, summer, right? Adolescence, the need to be nurtured. If that's disturbed, they're going to have an emotional problem. Summer, self-discovery, creating a separate self, the need to be free. That's when we start to practice relationships. And like Dr. Tom said, that's often where we get our first heartache. And they are tuned into soaking it all in. It's all about me. Autumn, adulthood, the need for purpose, the gathering or applying of knowledge. And any one of these that gets disturbed for us will create an emotional cathexis. And then winter, of course, is where we tend to need to give back. And I am so fortunate being a little younger than my mentors, because oftentimes they grab me and say, you need to learn more of this. You need to learn more. We're in a phase at that point of really wanting to give back of all that we've learned. So these are just things that you can utilize. Universal needs at the time of death. And I put this here because I want you to be able to help folks go through this before the last half hour. And this was given to me by an emergency medical doc who, for a number of years, lied to every single person that came into the emergency room that was going to pass. And he would just say, no, you're okay, it's okay, and then they would pass away. And at one point, a young boy came in a motorcycle accident, and the boy asked this EMT, this emergency medical guy, am I going to die? And for whatever reason, he shifted, and he looked at the boy and he said, yes, there's nothing we can do for you. You're going to die. And the result of that honesty was that the boy laid back, and he said a sense of peace came over his face, and he just passed away. And he said from that moment on, he never lied to anyone again about whether or not they were going to die. And what he found is that they all asked the same three questions. Number one, the need to be forgiven and free of guilt. The second, the need to have had a meaningful and important life. And the need to be remembered. And the need to be remembered was very interesting because oftentimes he only met these people literally in the last half hour or 15 minutes of their life. And they would ask him, will you remember me? So if this is what shows up for us, let's handle it now. Let's handle it for our clients now and get them to feel forgiven and free of guilt, and get them to understand that they really are having an important and meaningful life. And if they're not, what do they need to do to make that happen? And ultimately, do things to be remembered. I'm a very poor amateur artist. I love painting. And when I discovered this, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm filling up my basement with paintings so I'll be remembered. And I'd mentioned this earlier. I have no connection with series remedies other than I love them. I've used them for the last 12 years. And the reason I love them so much is because there is a physiological and psycho-emotional component to these remedies. They are fantastic, and I use them quite a bit. Geranium for shock and abuse, physical or emotional trauma. Passiflora, it supports the heart harmony, inner peace, heart communication. It opens up the person to love. These are folks that can't love themselves, and so Passiflora is fantastic for that. Ginkgo, the Ginkgo from Ceres, it's unity, it's equilibrium of the polarity, the mind and body polarities, and it is one of the great remedies for concussions. I've had folks, unfortunately, with concussions with both car accidents and sports, and one of the symptoms that they present, they'll say, I just don't feel like I'm in my body. Ever since I've had this concussion, I don't feel like I'm in my body. And I had a pretty severe car accident a number of months ago, and I had a pretty severe concussion where I was experiencing vertigo and dizziness and feeling completely out of my body, which is really creates a lot of anxiety. And I started taking the Ceres Ginkgo, and literally within 24 hours, I felt my system come back in and I felt whole again. So it's very powerful. And and Melissa, no, back. Melissa, it's very calming and soothing, especially for states of tension, anxiety, and restlessness. And oftentimes I'll test and blend some of these remedies, and whether we're putting drops in water and drinking them, that's fabulous. I also put them in spray bottles and with sterile water, and I have the person spray it in their mouth several times a day. And it just works fantastic. So this is kind of just a real quick overview of what we went through. Emotions affect the physical body. Unexplained pain is almost always emotionally based. That which is emotionally suppressed will absolutely be physically expressed. When in doubt, tap it out. If you can't figure out what's going on or why this person isn't shifting, when in doubt, go ahead and tap it out. You can't hurt them by doing that. 95% of our actions and reactions are triggered by what the body feels about things, not what the mind thinks about things. And for me, the mind and body are one. The idea of a mind-body connection, as soon as you say connection, well, that seems to say that they're apart and they need to be connected. Well, they're not. Your mind and your body are one. Help them install new software. Get them to control the self-talk. Practice mindfulness, which is really hard in our culture. Slow down. Do less. Be present. Don't worry. It's very hard for people to do that. Maintain a positive mindset. Forest bathing. This is from Japan. This is a relatively new study that was done, and the Japanese found that if people go into the forest and get amongst the trees, that the trees actually emit different oils and treat the person. So I said, wow, this is fantastic. And we've all asked our clients to go to the park and chill out and walk, right? Go walk in the park. And so I said that to a client, and I said, hey, how was it? Did you go to the park? She said, oh yeah, I drove to the park. I got out of my car. I got on the macadam pathway, and I walked along the trees. And I said, oh, you went to the tree museum. And she said, what? I said, you went to the tree museum. You didn't get among the trees. You walked as if they were in a gallery, and you looked at them. I need you to get in the grass. Get in the grass. Take a blanket and get in the grass and lay among the trees. Or put your back up against a tree and read a book. Leave your cell phone in the car, disconnect from that stuff, and get amongst nature. And just like Dr. Tom said, 30 minutes a day. Can you do 30 minutes a day? If your schedule says that you cannot do 30 minutes a day outside, then you need to do an hour outside. And I want to thank you all very much for this opportunity. I hope you got some good information out of it. Thank you.